volume 21, number 1 of the Colombian Applied Linguistics Journal. I'm going to start by introducing the speakers today. We are here with Dr. Malva Barahona. Thank you. My name is Amparo Clavijo, and I'm the editor of the Colombian Applied Linguistics Journal. I'm a full professor at the Universidad Distrital, and today we have invited Professor Jermaine McDowell and Dr. Malva Barahona. Professor Jermaine McDowell is the Director of Faculty and Research Department of Foreign Languages and Cultures at the Universidad de La Sabana, Chile, Colombia. He's an active researcher on CLIL, ICTs, in ELT, Teacher Training and International Education, and he's also the editor of the Latin American Journal of Content and Language Integrated Learning. Thank you, Jermaine, for being with us today. We have a special guest, Dr. Malva Barahona. She's from Pontificia Universidad Católica de Valparaíso. She's a special author who is going to be presenting the research that she and Dr. Renata Arcangel have already presented, and it's published in this volume. She's an associate lecturer in TESOL at Instituto de Literatura y Ciencias del Lenguaje en la Pontificia Universidad Católica de Valparaíso in Chile. Malva has been teaching in higher education institutions in Chile and Australia over the last 20 years. She has undertaken research in the fields of foreign language learning, second language teacher education, applied linguistics, and cultural historical activity theory. Dr. Renata Arcangel is an author from Brazil. We have 3 authors in this article. She is connected with us via Zoom, and she's going to be talking to us. What we have today is a special conversation with the authors. Dr. Renata Arcangel is an assistant professor at the Department of Foreign Modern Languages and Literature and at the postgraduate program of Language Studies of the Federal University of Rio Grande do Norte in Brazil. She has a PhD in applied linguistics, and the research areas that where she works is multilingualism, urban education, multilingual education, language policy, and the internalization of higher education. Dr. Julia Rebecca Finardi is the 3rd author of the article about teachers' identity that we will have as the main topic of this conversation. She's a senior lecturer in the Department of Languages, Cultures, and Education, and a researcher in the postgraduate program of Education and Linguistics at the Federal University of Espírito Santo. Her teaching and research areas focus on preserving English language, teacher education, and language education, the use of technology in education, and internalization. Dr. Kiria will not be able to talk to us directly, but Dr. Renata is going to be responding to the questions that we have for the 2 Brazilian authors. So we have 2 Brazilian authors and 1 Chilean author here, with whom we're going to have an academic conversation. So the topic for our conversation for this is specifically the title of the article from the 3 authors that I mentioned. Identity of foreign language preserves teachers to speakers of other languages, insights from Brazil and Chile. We have considered important in this time of globalization to focus on preserving teachers' identity formation through a specific transnational research that the 3 authors, Arcangel, Barahona, and Finardi, have carried out. So we would like to start by asking Dr. Malva Barahona why they were interested in addressing the topic of foreign language teacher identity.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm glad. Thank you. I'm grateful for the invitation. Well, to start the conversation, why? In other words, it's like, why should we study identity? And why should we study foreign language teacher identity? Well, so studying identity, teacher identity, relates to who teachers are, who they are, what they do, and how they develop those identities. But it's not prove kind of who they are in specific situations. So this, it's not just it's not a revelation of who they are, but it emerges as they engage into social practice. This is not just something that we describe as any other activity. Actually, it's a crucial matter to study, not only to understand the nature of teachers' lives and learning practices, but also if you want to transform teaching education, it's vital to do it. Because we need to know who they are, what they do, what they think, and their positioning in schools and in society, so as to change that for the more progressive and a global and local society. Also, something very important to note is that but there is enough data about the correlation of between stronger teacher identity and higher levels of teaching efficacy. That's to say, there's a tendency of better teachers, and that's correlated to stronger identity. So teachers demonstrate a stronger sense of being a teacher, also being considered by their communities as better teachers, more effective teachers. So all that actually makes it absolutely relevant to study teacher identity.
Thank you so much. Considering that, taking consideration identity and things like that, I wonder if we could shed some light on the following. We say the foreign language plays a role, a key role in teachers' identity. In fact, as a marker that embodies multilingualism. So I'm going to repeat the question again, Renata. Sorry about that. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Just a reminder, Renata is joining us via live video stream. So I'm going to address my questions right here to the camera that I have right in front of me. So with that in mind, considering teacher identity and things of that nature, yeah, what I do that. I wonder if you would be able to shed some light on the following. You state that foreign languages play a key role in the teacher's identity. As a matter of fact, it's a marker that embodies, as I said, multilingual speakers. If you could just maybe elaborate on that just a bit.
Well, hello, good afternoon, everybody. Are you listening to me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, just 1 second. We're starting to get the response. Just 1 second. We're going to go ahead and maybe connect the video. That way the audience has an opportunity to see you as well. And
okay.
Then,
so you just tell me when you are able to listen to me, if you are listening, if you can hear me.
Yes.
You can hear me?
1 second. We're going to turn up the volume just a little bit more. That way the rest of the audience can hear you. Okay. No, go ahead. If you could, please go ahead and respond. There we go. Now we can see you. Hello, how are you? So I'm going to go ahead and repeat the question again. You claim that, well, foreign language plays a key role in teachers' identity, and it's a marker that embodies multilingual speakers.
Well,
elaborate a bit. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, first of all, thank you all for having me at this conversation. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Okay, so answering Professor Germain's questions. Indeed, I think identity is something that each one of us constructed during our whole life. So this is so it's important because it is a process, and this is a driving force that guides us through our whole life. So in this sense, assuming that a certain language as its professional reference brings alongside the culture and sometimes some affective and certainly a political dimension that participates in the construction of an identity as a foreign language teacher. And so it's different from language to language. And in a sense, the participants, I think they all feel like participating at the feast of a multilingual world and as a multilingual speakers, knowing, however, that the language that they embodied can function in a more powerful or a less powerful instrument. So that's why I think identity act as a marker that participants embody as multilingual speakers.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. The following question is for Kyria. We're very interested in talking about the statement that you have posted in the article. In terms of, in Brazil, scholars are growing aware of the many roles and impacts that English acts on different aspects of social life and education. Can you further elaborate on these roles and domains of English in Brazil, please?
Well, this is particularly the field of expertise of my Brazilian colleague, Kyria Finardi, because she is an English teacher and she is working along on this topic. But yes, I think we made our point clear in our article, knowing that, well, stating that English has assumed the role of not only lingua franca, but international language and language as a medium of instruction, not only in Brazil, but in Chile and worldwide. And indeed, in Brazil, we have had recent changes in our national language policies, aligning Brazilians with this global trend. We have to remind that we had a bill passed in 2005 expressly suggesting that the teaching of Spanish was indicated as the second language to be offered in all high schools and then middle schools and high schools. But then in 2017, this law has changed, and then English has become mandatory, the second language mandatory, both in elementary school and in high school. So this has changed. And what I think has to be considered is that we are not running differently from other parts of the world. However, it should be in our best interest to encourage a multilingual education, despite the monolingual public language policy here in Brazil or in other countries. Because particularly for us in Latin America, historical, geographic, cultural, and also social reasons backs up the defense that should be of all of us, of a multilingual, to have a multilingual environment and defend multilingual practices.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to shift again over to Malva, and just to give you some ideas and thoughts related to the case study that you did this reason. And if you could elaborate on a couple of things. You talk about the transnational nature of the multiple case study that you collaborated on just recently and developed. Could you maybe shed some light on that?
Well, the objective of the study was to explore the imagined identities of foreign language pre-studies teachers in Chile and Brazil. In Brazil, in two different universities, in two different cities, and in Chile in one university. So the three sites correspond to teacher education programs, and these teacher education programs in two cases were for English teachers, but in another one, Renata's case, she was working with future teachers of not only English as foreign language, but also French and Spanish. So we decided to actually focus on these three sites, and we thought that it would be a contribution to have a transnational perspective, because South America, we could say, well, we share lots of things, but also some things are different. So we wanted to compare some of the experiences we were having regarding the practicum and didactic courses and the construction of identity in those sites, as I mentioned before. So for these, we had three orientating questions. One was, what are the emerging identities that foreign language pre-service teachers develop during the practicum course in these three different contexts? The second question was, how do foreign language pre-service teachers develop those emerging identities during the practicum? And last, how does the practicum experience mediate the development of these identity? So we decided this was a multiple case study. As I said, 2 sites in Brazil and 1 in Chile. And as Renata was explaining, in Brazil since 2017, English became the foreign language. The same happens nowadays in Chile, in which English is the compulsory foreign language in all the countries, so all kids have English classes. That's, someone could say, that's fantastic. However, that's in detriment of other foreign languages. Well, so it's got its pros and cons as well, and probably it's kind of a limiting sort of perspective. So in the case, as I said, 2 cases in Brazil and 1 case in Chile. In the case 1, we analyzed the beliefs of a group of Brazilian pre-service teachers of English as a foreign language during the period of their practicum. In the case of the second case in Brazil, analyzed the extent to which the idealized teachers' practices legitimize in terms of foreign language proficiency, something which was Renata already mentioned. And in this case, she worked with pre-service teachers from English, French, and Spanish. And last case took place in Chile, and it was the idea was to map out the emerging identity and contradictions of these group of pre-service teachers developed during their practicum. So this transnational nature of multiple case studies, we thought that enabled the possibility of not only capturing actions of individuals, but also understanding their motives and intersection with broader social cultural demands. And as Renata mentioned before, even political reasons too. So the design, the multiple case across different sites, and in this case across different countries, it was over multiple cases over time through detailed, in-depth data collection involving multiple sources of information rich in context, such as interviews, observations, I said questionnaires too.
Thank you. I think this really makes the article a context of multicultural, transnational, and multiple case study, which is very interesting for researchers being interested in studying teacher identities. The following question to continue the conversation is for Renata. In terms of the analysis that you carried out of this multiple case study research, you state that the analysis focused on 3 main issues. We are very, very interested in knowing a little bit more about these main issues, which are emerging identities, the role of foreign language proficiency, and the practicum as a mediating space to develop teacher identity. Could you please tell us a little bit more about how were these issues determined in the analysis, Renata?
Yes, Amparo, thank you for the question. And well, although we are dealing with the same research problem, the construction and emergency of a foreign language teacher's identity during the pre-service and the practicum activities, it is important to stress that the 3 of us, the 3 authors, are speaking, were speaking from different social contexts and different educational context of formation for a foreign language teacher. This is certainly a sort of limitation of the study if we want to draw on generalizations. But I think it's a very interesting feature if we look, otherwise, if we look at the similarities within the process of construction of a foreign language teacher identity from young professionals in quite different sites, which means that there is something universal in this process that is independent of the context and what is proper to the process of construction of an identity. So those three issues, emerging identities, the role of foreign language proficiency, and the practicum as a mediating space to develop teacher identity, were the connecting points of the three studies in those three different contexts. In all three cases studies, the findings were consistent with the fact that a foreign language teacher identity emerged, is constructed, or sometimes it's reinforced, benefiting of the practicum as a mediating space for those negotiations, and that within this space and time, foreign language proficiency appears as the most salient aspect in legitimate their identity as a foreign language teacher.
It's very interesting to hear from your study that proficiency was such a relevant factor in the construction of teacher identities. So it seems to reinforce really the focus of teacher education programs, English and teacher education programs on reinforcing very much the development of proficiency, and of course it is observed also in the practicum. We have one last question for the three authors of the German is going to put.
Sure. Well, just considering that there's a lot of talks going on nowadays about teacher identity, looking at initial teacher training programs and things of that nature. Would you both? I will start with Mayo or Renata. But according to the most salient findings, would you so kindly tell us about the correlations, I should say, that you found between the two cases of Brazil as well as the case study in Chile. So Renata, would you like to start, and I will go back to in a few minutes.
So do you want me to start?
Would you want to start? Okay, good choice.
Yes, okay. So thank you, Professor Germain. Well, as I have said before, I think the two cases in Brazil and Chile, in the case study in Chile from our colleague Malva Barahona, shows us how important motivation and agency in constructing for someone, for a teacher, a career as a foreign language teacher, because there is more than, I think there is more than the economic trend that in recent years, or legislation that in recent years has transformed the language teacher or professional into a valuable category of professionals in the world. I think the multilingual turn in a globalized world values multilingual citizens, but there is more than that, in my opinion. As we have stated in the conclusion of our study, teacher identity is context-bound and closely related to social, cultural, and even political links. Teacher identity is constructed, maintained, and negotiated in a community through discourse and social practices. And it's inherent to learning to teach a foreign language as a professional activity. And I think we have to permanently work on our skills. So that's how important is language proficiency, but also in our potential to become less dependent of the instrumental resources and more reliant on a social and political construction, because I think that this is what a foreign language teacher means as well. So I think that's why we correlate the results of the three cases.
Okay, thank you so much.
So to expand a bit of this, I mean, with something which was very clear in the three cases was that teacher identity continuous process, a never-ending process, and it changes. And some people would say, okay, it's obvious that it will change during the teacher education program. Yes, absolutely, but it doesn't end when people graduate, and actually it continues as teachers develop and engage in the activity of teaching. And so through interactions with others and with the activity of teaching, that identity will change. So as we know from the literature in teacher education broadly, not only in foreign language teacher education, we've got teachers have idealized images of the teachers they want to be. And so that is not only as a student teacher, but also as a teacher himself or herself. So that definitely it was something that emerged in the two cases. But also, it was this idea of conflicting identity, that it's conflict because on one hand, it's to be, okay, I want to be this kind of teacher, but this aspiration does not necessarily correspond to the teacher education program idea or nor the school. So the school has another other goals for teaching, and the same with the teacher education. So to a certain extent, these of these teachers are in between, in transition all the time. Yeah. So that's something that appeared as well in the three cases. Also something regarding Renata mentioned a bit about the role of practicum. The role of practicum historically has been seen as a space in which student teachers can actually articulate knowledge and theory in practice. However, so I would say that the practicum is an instance that allows these teachers to put into practice what they have learned at university. However, we contest and challenge that view because, yes, our participants, most of them said what I just said, that it's a place for practice. However, practice is something idealized, and if you continue seeing practicum as that, nothing will ever change. What we are saying is that actually the practicum should be seen as a side of a struggle, as a side where beliefs are confronted. Beliefs about teaching, beliefs about learning as well in the school, in a situated context. So if we see the practicum as a side of struggle, probably teacher education programs would be more helpful in supporting student teachers during that process, instead of continuing with the dichotomy or the contrary views of university on one hand and the schools on the other hand. So that's something that also emerged as part of the study. Like the practice has the potentiality of transforming teacher education.
Yes, thank you both so much for sharing some light in terms of some of the highlights of the results. All programs as well as studies as well. I suppose we have lots of things in common. Yes, lots of things in common. Lots of things that once again still needs to be as a research and constructive and organized and enjoyable. I want to thank you very much for your participation. So I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you very much for the.
I want to say something else regarding this is a bit of implications for teacher education programs. In the sense, something which has in the last 20 years that has taken place in South America, including Colombia, Brazil, and Chile, has to do with standards for teacher education programs. And regarding foreign language teacher education program, one big standard is about proficiency in the language. So that in my country, teachers of English are measured according to their level of proficiency. Other things are measured too, but that level of English seems to be the most important one. What happens with that measure? In the end, it's detrimental to the teacher perspective, because teaching is not about the level of proficiency, it's about being able to teach language, and that involves many other things, not just the proficiency level. So regarding and this is an implication, of course, it's broader than this study, but I want to kind of leave it there so that we can reflect on the type of identities the teacher education programs are promoting. What is it that we do that our student teachers aspire to be? Thank you very much.
Thank you for that reflection, Mayo. I think that we have learned a lot today by listening to the authors of this article in relation to the study. We have learned that our identities as teachers evolve, that they are dynamic, that we become differently, that through the experiences that we gain as we are teaching, but also that it is context embedded because it depends on the places where we teach, on the commitments, on the social commitments that we have as teachers, and on what we are able to do despite the measure that the government are making teachers accountable for. So we thank you, the three authors, for being with us today. Thanks to the technology that has allowed us to see and hear Renata with us here in Bogota today at this time. Thank you, Margo, for having traveled, having flown for some hours yesterday after having flown from Montreal and then arrived in Santiago and then take another flight to Bogota. Thank you for your effort. We are very pleased to have you here. We're always very pleased celebrating the authors' publications and having these kind of conversations. We would like to, before we close, I'd like to talk a little bit about the editorial process that we have in the journal, just to show the authors how complex it is to arrive at this moment of publication. What I usually tell the audience in this launching event is how specifically we do to arrive at this moment of celebrating the publication. In this flowchart of publication, we would like to show the process that the articles go through when they are submitted to the Colombian Applied Linguistics Journal. We receive them thanks to the diligent work of many authors who want to share with audiences, global audiences, local and global audiences, their studies or their pedagogical reflections. So there are three instances in this publication process. One, very important, is the authors who are writing, who submit the article and expect that the editorial staff and the reviewers also contribute with their part. So once we receive the articles, we will need to do a preliminary process of evaluation in which we determine that there are not coincidences with the internet content, etc., etc. The editorial staff then takes the time to do this first preliminary review, and then we decide and find two reviewers, experts on the topic, to also provide us with the professional opinions about the contents. So this process can take easily between 3-6 months to a year to actually have the article published. So it really, and I know that Jermaine leads this process also as an editor of CLIL journal. So we are authors are very, very important to us, as well as reviewers and our staff in the editorial team. Lastly, I wanted to share with you that this process of 20 years has really implied big changes as well in the editorial process. I brought today two of the issues of the Colombian Applied Linguistics Journal. One that was published in 1998. This is the first issue of the Colombian Applied Linguistics Journal that was published by my colleague, the master's program, That was the very first intention, really, and realization of having authors, professors, and students publish in a journal that became really the source of, talking to other authors and other teachers about what they were doing. And the latest issue, which is this, which has gained identity, has gained position, has gained leadership globally and locally. So this is a process of 20 years that the editorial team has really achieved a position and visibility in our country and outside our country. And of course, it has implied a lot of networking with colleagues like Dr. Malva Ramona, like Professor Germain, who has also published with us and has served also as a reviewer. So I want to, in these 5 minutes that I have left, I want to share with you a decision that is a personal and professional decision. With this outstanding group of articles published in this first issue, volume 21, I like to close an important professional and personal learning process as the head of the editorial team of the Colombian Applied Linguistics Journal. I feel grateful to my institution, Universidad Distrital Francisco José de Caldas, for the professional support received during the last 10 years by hiring a technical team through the Center for Research and Scientific Development to assist the arduous job of the editor. Moreover, the scientific community of the Colombian Applied Linguistics Journal was also fully supported by other national and international communities of scholars who are committed to the same high quality standards in publication, or have been in the field for a longer trajectory than us. To those thousands of authors, peer evaluators, colleagues in the scientific and editorial boards who have accompanied the editor for 20 years, I am very, very grateful. It was your professional judgment and ethical practice and our rigorous and ethical editorial practice that permitted to position the Colombian Applied Linguistics Journal as a solid scientific publication and a valuable source for teacher educators and researchers in Latin America and other parts of the globe where Colombian Applied Linguistics has a wide audience. So after 20 years of doing this job, this is the time to actually decide to move on and to continue enjoying doing research in our program and to leave this very, very important and arduous job in the hands of other younger colleagues who will definitely carry out a very important and responsible job as well. So I want to thank again Renata for being with us today, this afternoon. Thank you, Malva. Thank you, Jermaine. Thank you, the authors of the articles in this issue. And we hope to have it printed. It's already online. You can read it through our webpage in OJS. Thank you for being here. We're now going to join outside for a very small refreshment that Universidad Distrital is offering you. Thank you for being here this afternoon.
Did anyone, by chance, anyone have any questions or comments for either one of the authors before we take off? No? Okay, so I'd like to invite each and every one of you to some refreshments that we have right outside waiting for you, right here to the left. Thank you so much for joining us today. Take care.
Renata, we hope to see you soon in any
Yes.
in any conference.
Okay. So, bye-bye, Amparo. Thank you very much for having me.
Lovely to have you. Bye-bye. Thank
Nice
you.
to see you all. Thank you.
Obrigada.
Obrigada.